What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 626 of the Hot Tags of the Week here on the Smack Talk podcast. I am your host for this edition, Callum Wiggins, and joining me, as always, Robert D. Felice.
Hello, no matter what happens, I will never be the host. I am just better off as the sidekick.
The sidekick is always a very important role in these things. I don't think that the sidekick kind of gets a little bit undervalued because of that side aspect. You're the main character, but I'm the main voice.
That's right, exactly. Nailed it. We are here because Tony is not. Tony's actually in Florida. I might be seeing him in a couple days, and we're just going to do this one without him. But we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we decided to make sure that we plowed ahead on this one, just to make sure that you had something to listen to this week, and also because it has been a pretty noteworthy week in wrestling. So we're going to here to break all that stuff down, all the news, the rumors, the gossip, all of that great stuff. Of course, if you are interested in lending your voice or letting us know about the stuff that we're about to talk about, including some new faces in different companies, some people leaving different companies, some people that maybe people wish would be leaving different companies that may be sticking around in those companies, all of that stuff. Drop it in the comments below. Leave us a like on the video if you're watching there. If you're listening through one of the podcast apps, drop us a review or anything else that you can do to get our names out there and show how much you're enjoying this, or just want to get your thoughts out there about what we're talking about. So I won't go too heavy in the plugs at this side of things. I tend to wrap it around the end, whereas Tony likes to put it straight forward, because I really want to get into the main topic of this for us, which is going to be, let's talk a bit about CM Punk. He's a guy in the news recently. Now, if you listen to the post-show of Survivor Series, which Tony took on solo due to Rob being tied up in the conference, the post-show conference thing that they do for WWE nowadays, and I not watching Survivor Series and being asleep at the time, definitely couldn't have showed up at that point. But CM Punk returned. So CM Punk is back in WWE, came back at Survivor Series. And yeah, let's react to that. What do you think about CM Punk coming back to WWE?
I think that it's full circle in a lot of ways. It would never have had the impact that his overall return to wrestling had in 2021, but I think it was a huge moment for WWE in the modern era, and you cannot deny the place went ballistic. And, the social numbers were through the roof. They touted them at least 5 times during the Raw broadcast, but the place went nuts. It felt like a special moment, even though it was a very subdued moment compared to what the first dance was. It felt very special.
Yeah, it was definitely a big reaction. They did the whole Triple H trope of putting the logo up there to signal that the show was over, but then, hang on, we've still got a few minutes left for CM Punk to come out and soak in the adulation of the crowd, like his Chicago faithful out there. And there's a few things we can talk about beyond the actual debut itself, which is a big moment, but there's many things that we can lead on to it. First of all, kind of from an optic standpoint. So the optics for Punk, there's no real concrete answers out there bits and pieces out there about what this deal was about, how it came about, how it seemed to all come together in the last minute, and the Punk didn't have a contract until the day of Survivor Series. So that's at least what a lot of the reports are suggesting, that the deal was finally signed on the day. So kind of a little bit fine. I mean, that's probably the reason why you have Randy Orton return on the show, so that if the deal just doesn't go through on the day, that you've still got Randy Orton coming back. They probably wouldn't have played the show like they did with the whole show long storyline about is Randy Orton going to show up. They probably wouldn't have done that knowing that if CM Punk wasn't going to be there, because it just led to a load of people chanting for CM Punk to come out instead. But more interesting is how there's these other little bits and pieces about saying, is there kind of a behavior clause in the contract? What's the value of this contract? How many years is he signed for? A lot of that is still very much speculation, but yeah, the big deal is that he is back in WWE. Like the hell is frozen over, as he said in his promo on Raw, and it seems that at least from what he says, a lot of people were happy about that, and it's not really great on the optics of AEW to lose one of their what was before his departure probably their top star to the competition.
It's really not great on the optics of AEW. I know a lot of people. I brought this up to someone, and they said to me, "Well, what do you mean? It's perfectly fine. He got fired from there, and he wouldn't have been there either way." And I just sort of feel like, from the standpoint of the mission of AEW, the optics of Cody and CM Punk being two of WWE's top stars, it does suck for them because, they were big pieces of the puzzle. Punk wasn't the foundation, but did, as he said in his promo to Hangman Page 2 years ago, he did leave the blueprint for a lot of what AEW became. And then when AEW got him, it felt like a match made in heaven. And of course, we know that it turned out to be the exact opposite. But overall, I went to sleep on Saturday, I'm mostly just excited that there's some cool options for Mania. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people got bogged down in the optics of, oh, but he said, he comes off as a hypocrite. And by the way, I do think they played into that. But at the end of the day, it's just wrestling, and he's got to make money, and he hasn't done anything wrong by choosing to go back to WWE.
No, the money is there in WWE. If AEW, the door is now firmly shut, which it seems to have been based on the end of that relationship, then if you're going to make money in wrestling to a significant level, then WWE is your only real option. So I don't really blame him for going back. It's, people do have, if it's a case of whether you do want to put certain values above the ability to make money, and also the fact that he's now back in wrestling, and so there's the top option out there in WWE. So I don't blame him for going back to WWE. I just think that the people that are, I don't want to say complaining, but people that are calling him out for the stuff that he said in AEW aren't wrong for doing so, because frankly, he did say that stuff, whether that was, character CM Punk. CM Punk has always said about the fact that he's not a character. He's what you see is what you get. So if you say that stuff and then you go back to that competition, you go back to the people that you said about, that comment to the Miz about soaking a blood-soaked dick in Saudi Arabia, and all that other stuff about main eventing night four of a buy one get you one free extravaganza, that's going to come back on you a little bit. So I don't think that, but at the end of the day, Punk is going to be making a shit ton of money, and he's going to be on a big show, and he's going to be probably in a marquee match at a huge WrestleMania event. So in the end of the day, that's not going to make him lose any sleep over it. But
it is ironic, after he made that line, that the thing that might get him the vaunted main event of WrestleMania is the fact that they are a 2-night event now. Because we can get into the idea of, well, what does he do? And all reports seem to suggest that while they definitely want him to eventually fight Roman, he's looking at Seth at WrestleMania, and that's just not night 2.
Well, let's so there's a lot of little bits and pieces that we can get off of the whole CM Punk return aspect that we'll just fire off now. The first thing with the reports coming out after, both video footage and reports coming out of Survivor Series relating to both Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. So there was the Seth Rollins video clip that was circling around after Survivor Series of him just pointing up at the stage towards CM Punk, looking pretty distraught and then angry about the whole situation. That strikes me as that's complete angle. I don't think there's any.
There were a lot of people that were immediately worked by that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's clearly a work. That's Seth is, regardless of whether the stuff that he said earlier this year was truthful or not. I think he's the guy that will just go to work and will do things that he's asked to, especially if it means that he gets to work with a star of the caliber of CM Punk and potentially earn himself a main event slot at WrestleMania. Then I think that he's more than willing to play ball. So, but they're leaning into that real life animosity that Seth put out there in that interview a couple of months back. So I think that they're smart to lean into it and smart to try and add a little bit of a reality aspect to it.
And I think it's the only way you can go with CM Punk. He has to step up to somebody. If he's not going to step up to Roman immediately, like I still think that there's an argument to be made that you save him for the Rumble. But of course, when you have Chicago, you can't pass it up with him. But there's an argument to be made. Hey, you've got to tell this story, because what better story is there with CM Punk than you have become what you hate. You are now you're The Rock 10 years ago. You're coming in and you are completely taking off any chance a guy like Sami Zayn possibly had at main eventing, or even the women. There is some hypocritical elements here, and I think they're going to play into it perfectly. But also, it has to be said, this is Rollins' best chance at headlining Mania. Rollins himself has said, I can't be the guy in the Roman Reigns era. I have to accept that. And this is his best shot.
So the Drew McIntyre side of things, so that one, there seemed to be a lot of reports suggesting that was far more a reality aspect of the fact that he was frustrated. Apparently the reports coming out that he stormed out after the match, was out of the staging area by the time that Punk came out, and then was seen being frustrated behind the scenes, maybe like hitting a locker and then just storming out the arena. But then he's back at a live event the very next night, cutting a promo, and then he's back back on Raw, challenging Seth Rollins seemingly for another shot at the World Championship. So where do we think we really stand with Drew McIntyre right now? Is he just, is he actually frustrated and he's just, letting his contract run out? He's just going to do the time that he has left and then let his contract expire and go elsewhere? Or is the frustration another like reality style angle that they're trying to pull, where he has already re-signed, but they're trying to lean into the fact that people think that he's not re-signing and trying to do all that side of things? Again, we don't really know for certain. I think that it screams more of the fact that the frustration is probably real, but he's decided, okay, I'm just gonna do my time. I'll face Rollins again, and then when my contract's up sometime next year, I'll just head off to somewhere else.
I think he's got a lot more of a validity to be angry. Here's a guy who, your heel turn was the biggest thing in the company for 5 seconds because you're overshadowed by Randy's return, and then the whole War Games is overshadowed by, hey, CM Punk is just here. Yeah. I think there's a lot of reasons. Go ahead.
I'd say there was the reports that the guys in the War Games match were not told about CM Punk coming back until about 5-10 minutes before the match took place. So again, that could be, whether they are happy about it, whether they're not happy, whether they're completely ambivalent about it. It's not the ideal preparation going into it, knowing that, hey, you're about to have this match, but then CM Punk's coming out afterwards. So,
I know, like no one's gonna care about what you do in this match.
Yeah. As I say, I didn't watch Survivor Series. I've only seen bits and pieces of certain matches, so I can't necessarily say whether the match was particularly great or not. But it wouldn't match up to CM Punk's return. That's the thing that everyone's talking about coming out of Survivor Series. So yeah, if I was McIntyre, if I was a lot of the guys in the match, I probably would be a bit disappointed about having to put my body on the line for this big, apparently blow-off match, which has been like months and months of Cody and Sammy and Jey Uso and whoever else against the Bloodline against Judgment Day for weeks and weeks and months, and it's supposed to be like the end of it, the huge blow off, and okay, the babyfaces win, and hey, CM Punk's here. Who cares about the babyfaces winning now?
Yeah, and that was kind of my problem with the way they returned him, because I really would have allowed him a moment to himself, even if it meant, hey, we clear the ring and we're doing like a sign off. But the idea that it just sort of went, okay, War Games is over and no one's talking about it. I understand Drew's frustration. And there's still like the real aspect of, yeah, he got to be the face of the company, sure, for a couple months during the weirdest time in modern history to ever watch wrestling. Like, in some ways, this return just hasn't been what it could have been for Drew, and he has to be frustrated. But I still think they can parlay that into a lot of fun in story.
It seems like he's being geared up to challenge Rollins again. We don't know if that would be at the Royal Rumble or if that will just be on an episode of Raw leading up to that show. So now there's speculation about Punk. Well, let's move on to the episode of Raw, because that was very much built around CM Punk, and yet CM Punk was only there for the final 10 minutes of the show. Yeah, final 5-10 minutes of the show, which apparently was cut due to
Randy
matches going long. Yeah, Randy, which is good on Randy, because like his return was overshadowed somewhat by Punk coming back. So decided, let's go 5 minutes a little bit longer with Dominic here and see how it goes. But so Punk comes out for his promo. To be honest, I'm not, just as a overarching assessment, again, didn't watch the episode of Raw, but I would say that if you are promoting this whole first hour commercial free and CM Punk's back and Randy Orton is back, I would probably endeavor to put Punk on in the first hour at some point.
Correct.
Because you're trying to capture a lapsed fan that wants to come back and see CM Punk return and come back to WWE. So you want to get him out there immediately, and then if they want to continue watching the show, they can. But I think they tried to. It's too much of like, this was just a very average episode of Raw, capped off by Randy Orton has his first match back on TV, and CM Punk is there. Other than that, it was just your bog standard episode of Raw.
I think they should have absolutely kicked it off with CM Punk. Especially if they knew that he wasn't going to. I also, quite frankly, would have had him declare for the Rumble. I think him saying, I'm back, and I'm back to do the one thing that I haven't done. Again, I've said this privately to you guys. I would have completely said, I'm back, and I have to get rid of this sickness in me, and the sickness I have is I've had a great career. I haven't headlined WrestleMania. And for me to be the best in the world, I should probably headline WrestleMania. So I'm entering the Royal Rumble. At least then you know where we're going. Because he said a couple things, like he mentioned Heyman, but overall his promo, which was 5 minutes after 3 hours, which was normal, which was, if I'm watching, it's an average episode of Raw. If someone's watching for the first time in months, if not years, it's like a really plotting episode of Raw. I think it was a letdown in that way, and that's without even getting into the meat of what he said. I would have absolutely put him on in the first 5 minutes of the show. I would have laid the first hour heavy with talking and then started the tag team turmoil as we're going into that first commercial. Because I would have had him talk. I would have had Randy follow it. I would have had Seth. You know what I mean? Because I think that would have, either you're going to stick around for all of this and you're going to like what they had to say, or you're just going to be like, I'm not interested. I'll keep watching on YouTube. I think that they missed the ball a little bit. But also there was the thing about Triple H not actually running that show, and that was Bruce Pritchard.
Yeah. So yeah, Triple H not involved in that one. He's already, CM Punk comes back and Triple H already doesn't want to turn up for.
He already wasn't there.
I know, but it's just a little bit of a joke there. But so the promo itself. So to say that this promo has been divisive would probably be an understatement. There's been a lot of negativity towards this promo. Some people trying to read a bit more intrigue into it. Obviously there's people on the more positive side as well, but I know Twitter's its own little microcosm, but the overriding reaction I saw on there was predominantly negative. but that might just be due to the people that I follow. But the whole gist of the promo was Punk came out, said that Hell's frozen over, said that he's like struggles to admit this to himself, but he's back home where he belongs, and that he's come here and it's been all like love behind the scenes and everyone's happy and smiling. Apparently someone kissed him on the mouth. I don't know who that was, but and then there's saying that AJ's doing great, so he just brings up AJ Lee as well to get a bit of a pop there, and then says that like he's back and like he's dangerous and he's going out there to like take people on and prove that he's the best in the world, and even though people here in the company say that they are the best in the world. And then the last real thing is that after saying all that stuff, when he's got the mic away from him, you just see him saying to the camera that he's not here to make friends, he's here to make money. So I was initially, like many people, very underwhelmed with this promo because it didn't feel authentic. But then after you see him say the line that he says out off of the mic, like just down the camera, and I think that part of me is softened on it a bit because I believe that the inauthenticity of that promo is deliberate.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. We're on the same page, because I immediately was like, he didn't waste maybe 45 seconds into speaking. He said, "I'm home." And I thought at first, like, that's really weird, but okay. And then I realized over time, okay, he realizes the perception of him. He knows that people see him as a hypocrite, and he's going in with the mindset of, all right, then I'm going to give you the biggest hypocrite I can possibly be before I actually get into my main story.
Yeah. I can imagine that we see like a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so, because we're still 2 months out from the Royal Rumble. There's still a lot of episodes of Raw and SmackDown in between that time. So I can imagine that for the first few weeks, maybe month or so, we're seeing Punk, just hanging out with people behind the scenes, maybe just cutting just run-of-the-mill, like plain toast interviews and promos, nothing really that rocks the boat or does anything that's particularly intriguing or controversial, until a guy like Seth comes up and says, hey, what the hell's this? What are you talking about? This isn't CM Punk. Like, what? Like, you're here and you're just saying all the right things, all the niceties, you're playing nice. Where's the real CM Punk? Where's he hiding? And then that starts to bring out the more intriguing side of Punk, because I think the line that he cut at the end of it off of the mic is the reality, or at least the reality of the character that he's going to be portraying, in that he's just here to make the most money possible, get the main event of WrestleMania, be in the biggest deal like in the company, all of that jazz. But in the meantime, he's going to say all the niceties and all the, oh yeah, I'm here for you guys, and I love this place, and this is my home, and yeah. So I think that's the long-term route. It doesn't mean the promo itself was good.
It was underwhelming, but he didn't need to set the world on fire. He wasn't returning.
Triple H just demonstrated that he's very much a long-term booker, and that he's someone who, there's a difference between Triple H for me is the master of two things. He's a master of both long-term booking and booking that is just too long.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
There's always a difference between a long-term story and a story that just takes too long to be told. And Triple H seems to always find himself on one side or the other. So I'm willing to let it play out to a degree and see if it does head in that trajectory. Or it's either that or CM Punk is really just, is cashing a paycheck and is just saying what people want him to say and then just heading out afterwards. But I imagine that, knowing Punk, he is a creative guy, that he wouldn't just be doing that. But, people change. He's in this is probably his last run now. You imagine that AEW won't invite him back any point in time, and this is the last real big place in wrestling that he can be, his last real opportunity to be the top star and be main eventing WrestleMania and all of that jazz. So I don't think he's going to want to rock the boat at least early on in this point. So maybe this is who he is for the time being. But as it's at least interesting that he's there. So we'll see how that goes.
I think the most interesting line was the line about the wise man and how the wise man told him he had to leave to get everything he wanted out of WWE. And that immediately made me go, all right, in my dream world, it's a 4-way on the second night of Mania with Cody, Seth, Roman, and Punk. Because I think that there's just so much there. There's so much meat on that bone. There's the whole Rollins saying, I can't be the top guy if Roman's here. There's, Cody and Rollins maybe actually hating each other in real life. There's all the Heyman stuff. Like, that to me would be the most fun route to go with. But I think they'll obviously go with the 2 one-on-one routes. Overall, though, I liked the tone. It like I said, you can't put lightning back in a bottle. It can't be the first dance. But this is its own thing. And one thing that you might not have noticed yet, WWE is uploading so many classic CM Punk matches to YouTube. It's like they've just completely opened the vault and they have all these high profile main event matches to share. And you remember he had a long and really storied, really good in-ring career with WWE. So there's begrudging truth to that I'm home. You know what I mean? There's a lot of his career that exists solely in that library.
So that's Punk being back in WWE, but we can speculate a little bit. So WrestleMania is, of course, the big destination. Punk will undoubtedly have a big match in there unless he gets injured at some point in the next couple of months, which I hope not, just to at least see him at WrestleMania. But so the 2 stories that have come out, well, I say 2 stories, but there are 2 routes that seem to be that a lot of people are talking about. The obvious one is a match with Seth Rollins for the World Championship at Mania. But then there is the other thing that is being touted around, which is that we're going to see CM Punk versus Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I'm going to be honest. That ship is for me.
I know
that ship has totally sailed.
Wasn't it it was WWE 13, wasn't it? That was the 11
years. That was 11 years ago. That was on the heels of The Rock finally wrestling John Cena.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, we'll do Austin and Punk then. And, Austin said he would come out of retirement for that, but that ship sailed. You know what I mean? And not that I wouldn't want to see it. It's just not this year and not right now. But they did throw a lot of money at Austin for Roman last year or this year. And I guess you can never say never.
Yeah, so as it's probably one of those 2 routes, whether they can get Austin to agree to do it and then just do this one-off dream match, in which case Seth just has a match against, Gunther or Sami Zayn or something instead.
Or Seth ain't main eventing WrestleMania.
Yeah, definitely not.
Austin Punk, I would feel terrible.
No, but I think a lot of people are probably in the mindset of that he'd go against Seth at Mania. That seems to be what the aim of Seth's anger at the end of Survivor Series would be leading into, or at least some kind of angle between those 2. So yeah, I will be in the camp of thinking that would be the case until I see somebody else is challenging Seth for the title, or Seth loses the title. Who knows? But that's the route that I'm expecting for the time being. That's really the majority of the Punk talk. The only other interesting thing that came out in the days surrounding Punk's return to WWE was the report about Bryan Danielson being the head of the committee that was put together that determined that CM Punk should be fired from AEW. So this was following Bryan putting a tweet out there, basically recounting some wise words that his father had told him about how the right thing to do is not always the most popular or will make you the most money, but it's the right thing. Yeah, the easiest thing to do, but it is the right thing to do. And then this was followed up on by SRS at Fightful, who found out that Bryan Danielson is currently essentially the head of disciplinary action really at AEW, because he was both the head of this committee and he also is kind of decisive when it comes to handing out fines and any other form of discipline towards the AEW roster right now. So quite interesting to see. Again, we kind of know, based on what Tony Khan has said in the past, how important a cog he sees Bryan Danielson as, both behind the scenes as well as like wrestling in the ring right now. So it's interesting to see that he was so heavily involved in this pretty significant decision in AEW's history.
Yeah, disappointing in some ways. Just in the sense that, like, hey, it's never easy to fire a friend or to play a role in that in any regard. I think that from an in-ring perspective, one of the biggest issues or one of the biggest downfalls for me is that we won't see Bryan versus Punk ever again, and that's unfortunate. Also, Bryan's hands were kind of tied. Like, he was disrupting the flow of their workspace, regardless of what you feel about any of those situations. I think the more interesting part of that particular report to me is that Bryan is still responsible for handing out fines. And that means Bryan, is looked at in a huge role of responsibility in AEW. I look forward to seeing what that part of his life entails. Could he go down in history in 20 years as more influential behind the scenes than he ever was in the ropes? Yeah, who knows?
And Khan recently said that that the deal with Punk was, the deal with Bryan, should I say, was to get like 3 years of him being a full-time in-ring performer, and then beyond that point that he'll probably be making some sporadic appearances and still be with AEW in spirit beyond that point. So who knows if like he will have a long-term role behind the scenes in the company, if not in more of a part-time schedule, because the whole point of him retiring is that he gets to spend more time with his family. But it is interesting to see how much responsibility is put on his shoulders. But then again, Khan did say that if he was to keel over at any point in time, then Bryan Danielson would be the guy running AEW.
Runs the company. Yeah, so
I guess it's not that surprising that he's given that much responsibility.
And I think that's really cool, and the only thing I didn't like, first of all, we didn't talk about this, but I'm glad Punk didn't say anything about AEW.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there may or may not have been some NDAs, but in any case, it's still for the best. I didn't love the idea that, like, some talent in AEW were doing, like, these I stand with AEW posts. Like, guys, Punk went to another company. Like, it's fine. You're fine. I feel like those kind of tweets feed into the narrative that, without Punk, the ship is sinking, because you're fine and the company's fine. In fact, I think a report that came out today from the Observer says they're very profitable.
Yeah,
and
so
in line to be more profitable.
I think the report said they stand to make anywhere between $170 and $175 million in revenue from the past year.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And I just feel like certain elements of things make this seem more dramatic than it needs to be, and I am far more embedded, whether I want to be or not, in the Twitter of it all, and I just saw some ridiculous discourse. So, like, for me, the takeaway was, man, I'm really happy that CM Punk's still wrestling. He's one of my favorites. I'm happy that Bryan loves AEW as much as he does. I'm so sick of the discourse. Like, this thing where everybody is, like, fighting as though these are their family members that they're defending here. It's like, it doesn't have to be that deep, Yeah,
it's like there's no point going head first into the tribalism aspect of it. I think just people are insane about this, and there are so many people that are on Twitter on one side or the other that have been like desperately wanting AEW to die from the moment it was created, and there's others that like feel like WWE should be destroyed from it internally, and like just like what you like, dislike what you dislike, just make jokes most of the time. That tends to be what I do. So
even still, like, make jokes, not like this insanity of, like, people really wishing for these companies to fall is insane to me. I don't know. But the Punk saga is just beginning. He does have 9 lives. It's amazing that he does, but he does have 9 lives.
You imagine
And
he's on his ninth though now.
he might, maybe he's on his eighth. I think he's coming towards the end of the ride either way, and I'm looking forward to what this ride brings.
Okay, so that's like the big news story out of the way. So let's dive into a few of the smaller ones. We're going to dive a bit more into the Twitter universe a little bit later on, but let's start with some happy and pretty coincidental news. So there've been a couple of wrestling related births in the world this week. First of all, there was the announcement that Tay Melo and Sammy Guevara had given birth to their first daughter, Luna Guevara. And
Yeah,
then,
congratulations to them. That's
yeah,
super
congratulations to
cool.
the couple, of course. And then there was more congratulations to give because less than 24 hours later, Alexa Bliss announced that she and Ryan Cabrera had given birth to their first daughter as well, who was they've named Hendrix, considering the fact that he was born on the same day of Jimi Hendrix's. Was it Hendrix's birth or passing? I can't remember. It's one of those days, but
I think it might have been his passing.
yeah, but yeah, so Hendrix Cabrera
Cabrera.
and Luna Guevara both in the world now. So congratulations to both couples. Yeah, that's like just happy news there.
I like the that they got Mike Rome, the ring announcer, to do like an introduction for Hendrix. I thought that was very cute. Congratulations to them. That's super awesome. You know, love seeing just happiness in the space, and I hope that the babies are healthy.
So we go with that happy news because, frankly, to be fair, on the rest of my list, most of these ones are pretty neutral to negative. The rest of the stories, but let's lean into the first one. So we talked about Raw earlier, with CM Punk returning to Raw and that hour long of commercial-free stuff. But the big story or big speculation has been surrounding where does Raw end up, because we know that SmackDown will be back on USA as of next year. And NXT will also be finding a new home on the CW. But Raw currently doesn't have a settled home for 2024 and beyond. So, but there are people that are apparently interested. Well, of course, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are interested in Raw. But there was an announcement, an exclusive that came out apparently from WrestleWorld on Twitter, announcing that there were three top bidders for Raw's next TV deal, which were apparently at the time Warner Brothers Discovery, which people will know as the home of AEW, Disney, and Amazon. And then that fourth in the list, a distant fourth, was NBC Universal, which is obviously the current home of Monday Night Raw. And then a report from The Observer came out, then their weekly newsletter came out and said that the stuff saying about Warner Brothers Discovery was completely false and didn't know where that was coming from because they seem to be very happy and tied to AEW as their wrestling entity on their networks. So we still don't really know. I guess the question to you is: do you believe the exclusive report? Or do you believe that that Warner Brothers Discovery aren't interested in bringing Raw over to their network?
I believe that even if they were interested, they would likely be interested in kicking their competition off the network. And I think Warner Brothers is too heavily invested in AEW from a airtime standpoint that I don't think that's going to happen. However, there does need to be said, Warner Bros. Greenlit a whole 2-hour wrestling show based on the idea that it would be built around the guy who might be the champion of Monday Night Raw come April 4th or whatever it is. So there is that. I think FX is a reasonable home because it's more like a lateral move. There's no real growth or progression. I think Amazon might be the target. Because then, as I've said before on this podcast, then they cover their bases. They have a streaming home, a network home for NXT, and a cable home for SmackDown.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where it does land. As I say, I don't know. I don't think that Warner Brothers will go with them with AEW still under their umbrella, and that's still, even though there's been still no announcement to suggest that AEW has signed a new big TV deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. There's the likelihood is, based on how the relationship has been and how Tony Khan talks about them and how they seem to talk about AEW, and they tell how well they're doing in terms of their ratings. I don't think that it's likely that they'll switch over, but who knows? There's still many months to go until that would happen.
Dave did say when that WrestleWorld report came out that you should expect something soon. That's interesting.
Let's and yeah, as I say, they would probably want to try and get this wrapped up before, or at least like early 2024, if not before 2024, to make sure they know that, okay, well, this time next year we're going to be on this place instead. So I don't imagine that it's going to be a long time coming before they finally settle on where they're going to be and what the details of each deal would be. But yeah, at the moment, I think that we're looking at, I would say we're looking at either FX or Amazon Prime, but we'll see how it goes. That's the latest on where Raw potentially will end up in the final piece of WWE's jigsaw of TV shows. Now, in less happy news for WWE, they're cutting season. It's cutting season again, not for employed on-screen talent, apart from one notable one, which we'll talk about.
Apparently.
But there've been some more corporate layoffs at the WWE offices right before Christmas. They always pick their timings really well. And
there has to be, it's December 1st as we record this. There has to be like some kind of, okay, it's the start of Q4 or whatever, because that's really intriguing to me.
But there was one on-screen name that has been released, or at least that she has announced, that McKenzie Mitchell, the NXT backstage interviewer, has said that she's no longer with WWE. Of course, they didn't announce it because they never announce these things now. So she went to Twitter and let us know that she was no longer with the company. I think you'll probably echo a lot of this, but I think it's quite a disappointing release because she was a very characterful backstage interviewer. She was not your typical robot reading off auto cue and just put microphone in wrestler's face and let's move on. She tried to add some personality, add some depth to it. She was obviously she's the wife now of
Vic Joseph, yes.
Yeah, Vic Joseph. So so they had that little rapport when she would go between like what was happening backstage and then back to Vic at the announce table. And so yeah, I think that it's not great that they would let her go, but I'm sure she'll be able to find opportunities elsewhere if she wants to continue in wrestling moving forward, because she does have a lot of personality about her.
Yeah, I really hate this move. She's fantastic, and it's really disappointing. I mean, I know that people tend to put a lot on like married couples, but you're Vic Joseph, it has to suck. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to get to work with your wife anymore. Your wife is currently unemployed. It's just not great. And I wish her the best. I think she was a bright spot of NXT, and I hope that she continues to be a presenter in the future because she's one of the best available in modern wrestling.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see where she potentially ends up next. I would say AEW would be a good spot, but AEW already has quite a litany of very interesting and compelling backstage interviewers. So obviously with Renee Paquette and RJ City and obviously Tony Schiavone does some backstage stuff, and Lexi Nair is very good as well. So it might be hard to find a place for her there, but I'm sure Impact would be able to find a place.
I mean, like TNA looks like they're about to make a big splash, or at least they want to be able to. So maybe they try to pick her up.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in
Hannafin.
the former
Phillips.
Todd Phillips,
Yeah.
former Tom Phillips there. So I think that I'm sure they'd be willing to bring in somebody that can add a bit more vibrancy to some of their backstage segments. That'd be cool. Let's see what else we've got to talk about. Let's move on to strictly AEW stuff because most of the topics relate to that now. Let's start with what was announced only like a day after CM Punk's arrival back in WWE. It's QT Marshall announced on Twitter that he was resigning from AEW with pretty immediate effect. And
he's going to finish up the year, which I guess at this point is just 4 weeks.
Yes, so not too long to go, but QT is an interesting character to leave AEW. Obviously, in-ring talent and guy that was QTV and was kind of like a perennial, like lower mid card, like heel faction leader, but then job guy for the most part as well. And yeah, but it was mainly his roles like behind the scenes has been like involved in like talent relations and his role as a trainer in the Nightmare Factory. So it's more of an interesting departure from a behind the scenes perspective than more of an like on screen in ring perspective. But what's your take on Marshall's decision to leave?
I think it'll be a pivotal one when we look at however AEW progresses in years to come because of how much he did behind the scenes and because we've never really seen this, have we? And Marshall just straight up said, I'm resigning because I don't feel like it's the same company anymore. And that's very telling because this is a time of transition. And I don't know, I feel like he's got a lot of options. I know that MLW has shown some interest, according to Sean. I know the Observer reported that WWE is interested. Marshall's got a lot to offer wrestling. It just depends on, does he want to be on camera or behind the scenes?
So there were reports that came out in the soon after this announcement that suggested that he wanted to be a wrestling TV star or like just a wrestling star, and that wasn't going to happen in his current status with AEW. And then there was also reports suggesting that Marshall had wanted to leave because he wasn't happy with the direction that the company was going, and suggesting that it might be too much of a New Japan pro wrestling style of booking.
Which I think is weird because that report came from Nick Hausman,
mm-hmm.
and arguably to me, outside of a few things with MJF and outside of a few things with Edge and Christian, which are brand new, AEW has always been wrestling first. Like Tony's biggest criticism of the program is guy versus guy equals match. I don't understand this thing of like, yeah, but they're going in too much of a New Japan direction.
It's funny because like my biggest criticism of AEW throughout, especially the last year or so, is that they're too story orientated.
Right, but I don't feel like if they were going to go back to something that I think they were doing in the beginning when Marshall was a huge player, I can't imagine him being like, I don't want to be near this.
No.
You know?
I think AEW does more, let's say, long-term stuff, and again, they've had a bit of like erratism this year in particular with some stuff just being dropped and moved around, and maybe thinking more week to week than they have ever done in the past. But you have like the long-term things of that whole big BCC versus the Elite storyline, which span across like 7 or 8 months. I think that they are more wrestling orientated, but New Japan's style of booking is, let's say, it's not perfect and it's not for everyone, but it is, you can tell really good stories just from telling them in the ring and through a few promo segments rather than needing to be like, well, really over the top character stuff. Because I mean, fundamentally, QT Marshall was most prominently featured with both QTV, which sucked and is going to be very negatively placed down in my kind of AEW End of the Year awards, and the whole Codyverse stuff, which turned a lot of people off as well. It was like one of the more polarizing parts of AEW when Cody was still there. So I think his style, or if he does have this approach that he wants to see from AEW, seems to align more with what WWE could offer him. It just seems interesting that he sees that AEW is moving away from what it once was, whereas I feel like AEW is moving away from what it once was, but not in the direction that Marshall reportedly thinks it is.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned QTV. There was also the report, I believe it was from Wrestle Purists, that said Punk didn't like QTV, and Marshall and Tony took the brunt of the blame for axing it, and that soured the relationship between he and QT Marshall. And I'm sort of like, hey, listen, if Punk didn't like QTV and felt like Powerhouse Hobbs was better served doing other things, that sounds like a positive to me. Look,
that's like Punk, for all the stuff that he's done in terms of just like behind the scenes and politics and all that other stuff. The fact of the matter is the guy knows wrestling, and I kind of trust most of his opinions when it comes to just booking, philosophy, and presentation and that sort of stuff. He knows what he's talking about. So I don't think that's like, if I ever say like negative things about CM Punk, I certainly wouldn't say that he doesn't know what he's doing from a pure wrestling booking and storyline structure perspective. And he's totally right. Like, it totally neutered Hobbs' momentum after winning the TNT Championship to be part of QTV. And now he's having to be rebuilt again for like the third or fourth time in AEW.
Right, and I just think like enough is enough. Like there's a place for something like a QTV, and hate all of it. Like I think that was a good place for Morrison, but I didn't think it was a good place for Hobbs, and just because of that, I don't think that QTV had to stop just because Hobbs was in it. It just shouldn't have ever been in it to begin with.
So he'll head off. Like, as I say, if he wants to be like a prominent name in a promotion, then you're probably looking at a place like MLW or NWA. I don't think TNA would consider him like a top get if they were if he was to come in there. So I think you're looking probably at like a third or fourth tier promotion. But then if he goes to WWE, he would just be like a trainer, I imagine.
I think he would be more of a producer. I think he did a lot behind the scenes.
But we'll see where the future is for QT Marshall. But now there's someone who a lot of people would like to see out of AEW, and it seems that he would be more than willing to leave AEW if asked to. But let's talk about Ric Flair. Just a work around there to get to Ric Flair, because this whole stuff. So obviously Ric Flair joining got a lot of people upset in the first place when he came into AEW as part of Sting's retirement tour. A lot of people getting up in arms, like you say, fairly so, because of Ric Flair's history and the association of him being in the company and what the company stood for, and Ric Flair being there and all that stuff. And then Flair comes out on episode of Dynamite, is on a promo with Sting, and like backstage promo, which is very, very unscripted, and Rick was just all over the place, but nothing too harmful from the Dynamite one. But then there's reports coming out about the promo that he cut for Rampage, which included the line, again, I don't know what the line was verbatim, but it included some reference to the fact that he would like all 18 to 28-year-olds available to form an orderly queue and like...
Okay, I got this, because...
Be something like that.
Here's the deal. They announced the Revolutions in Greensboro, right? Makes sense. Flair, Sting, Greensboro. Great. He did ramble, but that is what it is. And then I started seeing the line from Rampage come out. The line was a very famous line that he used to deliver when they used to frequent the Greensboro Coliseum. If there's a woman in the world anywhere between the ages of 18 and 28, no boyfriends, come onto the hotel room and ride Space Mountain. Something to the effect of women 18 to 28 come ride Space Mountain. The problem with that, Rick, and anyone who would allow Rick to say these things, he was saying that line frequently before we were born.
Yeah, when
right?
he was in his 30s and 40s,
30s and headed to 40s.
And was a top wrestling star and a top wrestling heel in the company.
Right, and when, honestly, to be fair, there were a couple of women in the world between the ages of 18 and 28 that maybe wanted to check out the Horsemen back at the hotel. He's 74 years old. And people heard that line and they thought, oh my God, here's a guy who has rape allegations. And here's a guy who's 74 openly inviting 18-year-olds to his hotel room. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it's nothing realistically about the actual. Well, it's obviously the line itself, but it's the guy who's saying the line is the bigger issue, because we've seen people like MJF say promos in the past, heel promos in the past about ring rats and all that other stuff. Again, it's bottom of the barrel shit anyway, but you know, there are characters that say stuff like that, but it's more the fact that we know so much, or at least we have heard so much about Ric Flair's exploits and all the negativity surrounding that, the plane ride from hell and all this other stuff, and a lot of other allegations that have come out in the past. And then for him to just come into AEW and just be that character, it's just it's seedy, obviously, and that's clearly gotten a lot of people upset about the whole situation. And as I noted beforehand, he's already not the most popular guy to a very large percentage of the AEW audience right now. So now he's just going even harder into his character, the character that made him famous, and now he's naturally drawing some more ire, which then led him, following the negativity that's surrounding it, to hop onto Twitter in his own inimitable style, because as anyone that follows Ric Flair on Twitter, or at least just checks out Ric Flair's Twitter, he says everything in capital letters, which is always a funny way of approaching it. That's very much like old man using computer for the first time, just typing everything in capital letters, or whoever's doing it for him, I don't know. But this is the post that he put out verbatim. I am so tired of hearing all this negativity. I don't need to work and I don't need the money. Can't I simply enjoy being by my dear friend Sting's side for the next few months without so much hatred? I know I'm old, but that doesn't mean I can't enjoy life. I've earned the right to do whatever I want, and I'm exactly where I want to be. I appreciate everything, Tony Khan, but I'm more than willing to walk away if I'm embarrassing you and your company. All I can say is I'm sorry. So essentially, Rick goes out onto Twitter and cuts the biggest kind of guilt trippy style promo that he possibly can out there, suggesting that, okay, he's just here to be by Sting's side as he goes through his retirement from the ring, leading into Revolution, and that he's seeing so much negativity online and people angry about the promos that he's cutting, or the fact that he's even there in the first place. It's like, hey, I'm an old man now, but I'm still cool. I'm still hip, and I can still do all this stuff, and I've earned the right to be able to make the choices that I do, and all of that stuff. But if people are upset about that, then I'll just walk away right now. And I mean, Rob stepped away for a little bit, so I'm kind of going on a little bit of a solo voyage here for right now. But my kind of summation of that would be, hey, if you're happy to walk away, Rick, then I'm happy to show you the door, because I was very down on Rick joining AEW in the first place. I just don't think that it fits in with the value, especially when you've had Tony Khan in the past put out Twitter posts about Rick, like Vincent Mann's allegations, and has said openly that Hulk Hogan is not allowed anywhere near the company. He's like banned from attending AEW shows. And Rick is cut from a similar cloth, and so I don't think that he should be anywhere in this company. He just doesn't fit into the ethos of what we wanted AEW to be, which would be a breeding ground for young guys, not old people with very shady allegations against them. So yeah, would be very open to the idea of Ric Flair deciding to step away without causing too much damage. But then there's the whole Sting issue, and does Sting still want to have Ric Flair be out there? It's like this whole thing is like a gift to Sting, and like Sting retires at Revolution, so are we just gonna bite our tongue and just let it happen with Ric Flair for a little while? But I don't think it's despite how important Sting has been to the fabric of AEW and how good of a job he has done for AEW, I don't think that we should just stay stum and just say, okay, let the creepy old man just be there for a little while and let's move on with things. People were more than within their rights to call out Ric Flair for his past shenanigans and the fact that he should just kind of, I'll say, act his age a little bit, but just be in the background, just be kind of grateful that you're there, just do nothing and just play along with it. And yeah, so I think I'd be all for Ric Flair just calling it quits, but apparently some other guys in AEW would say things differently, which is Ric Flair, after that tweet, the one that I saw, I think there's been a few more since then, but the one big name that I saw that came to leaping to his defense was Miro. So Miro reposted Ric Flair's little rant there and said, don't listen to the dirt sheets, they don't know anything and they are they're in the wrong, just keep being you, all that stuff. They don't represent the real fans. The real fans want to see Ric Flair. So this was a very interesting approach for Miro to take because, one, it seems very much so that the fans are the ones that want Flair out, or at least the vocal fans on Twitter. Again, we say things about like Twitter being just a microcosm of the whole wrestling landscape, so we can't really read a ton into it, but it does seem like there is a very anti-Ric Flair, I don't say agenda, but overarching opinion towards Flair. Because saying it's an agenda makes it feel like it's a wrong attitude to take, which I feel like most people are quite right to do so. But then you have seen some other people as well, other people sending their love to Ric Flair. Like had Rob just left this in the chat for me, of like Steve Austin saying that trying to support for Ric Flair, Chris Jericho as well, saying don't listen to online assholes champ, you're fucking Ric Flair, do what you want. You got Kevin Nash as well. Like, besides the fact you've earned the right, you wouldn't be there if you weren't drawing fans. You always bring a smile to my face. Go Michigan. Again, it's just like it's a lot of old men supporting an even older man. And like Steve Austin doing it as well, when the sort of allegations have been directed towards him in the past as well. Like, I don't know why some of these people can't get it in their heads that like today's especially younger audience and more in tune audience, doesn't want a guy with a lot of like potential alleged sexual assault allegations on their TV screen, and they're not willing to forgive him because it's Ric Flair. And yeah, like that would be totally fine if you watched him. Like, I'd say totally fine, but like it could be somewhat understandable if you watched him in his prime, and that was like the core of your fandom was like watching him wrestle in the 70s and 80s in like Mid-Atlantic or in WCW and all that stuff. But like he is a wrestling legend, but that doesn't absolve him of everything that he's done in the past. Like guys like Miro stepping up and doing it as well. Like, Miro, why don't you lose to someone in AEW for a change rather than just like coming out with this as well? Like, I mean, Miro immediately strikes me as a guy that will jump ship to WWE at the first opportunity. And to be fair, considering the output that he's had so far in 2023 in AEW, I wouldn't miss him either. But yeah, I think that I think people are just letting their overwhelming fandom for the wrestling legend, the character Ric Flair, overstretch the fact that he has stuff to answer for, and we, as a lot of people as AEW fans, don't need to be like worshipping the ground that he walks on, in the same way that I think fans are really abhorrent that like bow to Vince McMahon whenever they see him come in. Yes, they've done great stuff in the past, and yeah, they had great matches and all that other stuff. They're also pretty horrible. I say horrible, but like from all accounts, like pretty icky human beings. And so let's try and move on from that fact. So yeah, that's the whole story with Ric Flair right now. It's a bit of a weird, icky situation. When Rob gets back, we'll see if he can bring his thoughts into it. We'll circle back into that. I'll discuss a few other things in the meantime, which don't really have that much discussion points. But just on the AEW side of things, we had the announcement about Serena Deeb's current situation, the fact that she's been out of the ring for a very long time. Apparently, this was due to the fact that she had suffered multiple seizures over the course of it. I think it said like 3 seizures over the course of the last year, since I think October of last year, which is obviously a very scary situation. If you aren't able to find the cause of these seizures, then obviously you wouldn't be stepping in the ring at that point in time, because it could be a very, very dangerous situation to suffer one. So it's understandable why she's been out of the ring for so long, if that has been the case. But apparently she's said that she's seen neurologists now. They've looked into the situation. She's now completely healthy, and there's no more risk of the seizures coming back. So that means that she could, at some point, return back to the ring. So she's cleared to wrestle again. So that's good news from a wrestling standpoint. Obviously, there's a few issues with Serena Deeb, just from who she associates with, that a lot of people aren't too happy with. But just from a pure in-ring perspective, it's a good addition to have to the back to the AEW women's roster. She's incredibly talented. She's very much a ring general. She could teach a lot of people on the lower side of the in-ring work for AEW, all their new like young stars. You're looking at the likes of Sky Blue, if you're doing with someone like that, or some people that perhaps need more ring time, or to be working with someone of her caliber. It's a good addition to have back in. But it was less good news for Bandido, who a lot of people were saying would be back pretty soon after he recently had surgery on his wrist, and he's been out for a very long time, and people were hoping that he'd be back in an AEW ring pretty soon. But apparently the bone didn't heal as well as they would hoped it to be. So Bandido recently came out on Twitter and said that there's currently like 3 options open to him, which one of them is a bit of physiotherapy, in the hopes that the whole injury would heal up without the need of surgery, because the other 2 options are 2 different surgeries. So that would lead to a lot more time out of the ring for Bandido, but it does mean that we probably won't see, almost certainly now won't see him until 2024 at the earliest, which has been a real shame, because it's a very exciting signing for AEW, someone that has a lot of talent, has had some great matches in the short time that he's already been with AEW. And so it's disappointing to see him miss any more time due to injury. So again, that's quite unfortunate. In the meantime, there's been some more people hitting to Twitter. It wasn't just Ric Flair and Miro and all the other guys hopping onto Twitter to post some frustrations or to vent out some stuff about AEW. Britt Baker's been doing the same as well. So following the latest episode of Dynamite, which saw pretty lengthy promo segments for both MJF in the build-up to his World Championship match at World's End with Samoa Joe, and also a promo segment for Christian Cage and Adam Copeland in the build-up to their match next week in Montreal for the TNT Championship. Britt Baker pointed out the fact that throughout all of 2023 so far, she has not had a single live in-ring promo segment, which was like set a few people thinking about that, because obviously when she was AEW Women's Champion for a significant period of time, she was very much heavily involved in a lot of promo segments, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. So she was just bringing up and venting a bit of frustration about the lack of promo time that she has had, which I think is understandable, considering the fact that her promo ability is probably the biggest asset that Britt Baker brings to the ring right now, especially because a lot of her in-ring matches for 2023 have been a little bit, I don't want to say subpar, but it's not been at the level that it was when she was having those banger matches with Thunder Rosa in 2021 and having that very good title reign as well. I think she kind of has fallen off a little bit, but she hasn't been wrestling that much. So that, again, could be an understandable reason why there's been a bit of a drop-off. She hasn't had a lot of focus on her as well, because especially after Jamie Hayter's injury, she was kind of playing second to Jamie Hayter. And then she hasn't really, she's had a few opportunities at the title, but she hasn't had any dedicated time to her, no real one-on-one feud between her and whoever the champion has been, whether that's been Saraya or Toni Storm or Hikaru Shida. It's all been a bit, been a lot of stuff happening around her rather than directly involving her. So her bringing up this tweet at this point in time is an interesting way of looking at it. You could say that it's kind of an end of the year thing, so now she's reflecting on it, and maybe it's just like genuine frustration about this whole situation, why she hasn't been as heavily featured as she has been in the past year. It could be more just storyline related, and the fact that she's targeting MJF in particular with it. I know there was also this stuff that was coming out this week about, again, this whole wrestling accounts liking other tweets that were disparaging. I think there was some tweet that came out there after MJF put a tweet out just saying a lot of stuff about how he's hurt and banged up, but he's still fighting forward. And then someone reposted that saying that you're single-handedly responsible for destroying the feeling that people associate with AEW. And then that was liked by people like Britt Baker and Sammy Guevara and Jack Perry, I believe, all liked that tweet. So maybe there is some kind of more dedicated storyline reason for that happening, but again, they couldn't really be involved in seeing that tweet and then a storyline just pops out of it, because you don't know that tweet's going to happen in the first place. So I tend to think it is just some people are frustrated in their current spot, and there are some people that are frustrated with the whole direction the company has potentially gone with, especially with MJF on top. And MJF is, by many people's accounts, has the most powerful creative voice behind the scenes in AEW right now. He's like right on Tony Khan's shoulder and like guiding a lot of his creative direction, and therefore a lot of the creative direction of the show itself. So it wouldn't surprise me if there is a lot of just genuine, real frustration that people are venting towards the end of the year now, and they want to have their own opportunities. So, you know, Britt Baker has been a top star for AEW like in the past, and so she probably would like to be back up there again. So we'll see if that situation changes. But until AEW kind of gives more of a universal focus to their women's division rather than the one match and then potentially one Toni Storm backstage vignette or segment, I think it's unlikely we'll see Britt enter that prominent position again. So that's kind of the main stories before we move on to TV talk. Again, Rob's still away for the time being, so I'm just like carrying the load for a little while, but I'll move on to the TV talk. Fundamentally, I can't really say much about Raw besides the CM Punk promo, which I watched in entirety. Randy Orton was back. There was a tag team turmoil where the Creed brothers became the number one contenders for the tag team titles. That's good to see them get prominently positioned in the WWE ranks. That's good that they've come up and they're immediately given opportunity, but I'm pretty sure they did the same thing with Pretty Deadly, and then Pretty Deadly, well, unfortunately, one of them got injured, so it kind of derailed their momentum. So we'll see if the momentum of the Creed brothers maintains beyond this initial mini push. Other things, I think the Chelsea Green and Piper Niven successfully defended their titles against Tegan Nox and Talia, so we still got the same women's tag team champions. Other than that, I don't think there was anything majorly noted Raw, except for Nakamura sprayed red mist in Cody's eyes, so clearly that was the guy that Nakamura's been targeting, or they've decided that that's the guy that Nakamura's been targeting all this time, was Cody Rhodes, giving him a bit of a feud before he announced that he was entering the Royal Rumble. So this is just a way to bridge the gap now between that and him potentially winning the Royal Rumble, so he can challenge Roman Reigns for the title at WrestleMania, if that's the route they decide to take. So that's where it is right now. So that's Raw. NXT, again, that's really not my bag. I've heard there was some good matches on there because they had a North American Championship number 1 contendership fatal 4-way match between 4 former champions in Wesley, Johnny Gargano, Bronson Reed, and Cameron Grimes. So I'm pretty sure that'd be pretty worth checking out considering the names involved. I haven't seen it, but by all accounts, it's probably a very good match. There was Ilya Dragunov destroyed Nathan Fraser. We had Kiana James lost a qualifying match for the Iron Survivor Challenge against someone. It'd be good if I had the NXT results up for this. I just imagine that I could somehow guess at what was happening if I wanted to, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. So let's see what these results say. So we had so it's Kalani Jordan was the one that defeated Kiana James. So that's unsurprising considering that they are continuing the feud with Roxanne Perez, and she was the one that got involved, ringing the Timekeeper's bell to distract Kiana James, and so they then had a brawl in the deadly NXT parking lot to set up what presumably they'll have their own singles match or some kind of a gimmick match at Deadline. So wait and see how that happens. Had Bron Breakker defeated Eddie Thorpe to make his own way into the Iron Survivor Challenge match. So there's a spot for the former NXT champion there to try and get into a match to earn that other opportunity. Karen Petrovic defeated Ariana Grace. Okay. Lexis King beat Brooks Jensen because I think he was put forward for the match for Josh Briggs after Briggs had already qualified for the Iron Survivor Challenge. They put Brooks Jensen in for a match with Lex King. That wasn't a qualifying match because Lex King is still heavily involved in this whole who attacked Trick Williams storyline. We had Tony D and Stacks retain their championships over Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza, so that probably opens up the opportunity for those two to move up to SmackDown if that's the route they decide to take, with them teaming up with Santos Escobar in the future. So they're pretty much now out of the tag team running. So yeah, that's pretty much NXT. I'm pretty sure Rob can fill in a few more details if there's anything of actual interest or note that happened on the show beyond the actual results. It's into the realm that I can actually help out with, which is AEW. So this week's AEW, let's talk a little bit about Collision, just to scale back a little bit, mainly just for the latest results in the Continental Classic.
Rob is back, and Rob would like to thank Callum for carrying the load.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you as well for taking some of this off before I move on to AEW. I'll let you talk a little bit about some of the stories that I was just barreling my way through. Talk a little bit about Ric Flair while I drink something to get my voice back.
Yeah. So my thing with Ric Flair is, as Callum said very expertly, it's like you have these old men who are standing up for him, and the thing is, you're dealing with a generation right now that doesn't care. You know what I mean? Where like my generation and Callum's generation were probably like, yeah, but it's Nate and you're dealing with a generation right now that has zero attachment to Ric Flair. For God's sake, he's feuding with Nick Wayne. Nick Wayne wasn't even in elementary school when, Ric Flair retired. It's Ric Flair has overstayed his welcome. And I feel like for the last 15 years, the question with Rick, even when you like him, has been, do we need this guy? Right now, I feel like, and I tweeted this out, if you must have Ric Flair, you insist on having the Nature Boy. Keep him on a short leash. I hope that they edited that line out of the promo for tonight, because I'm sure that that's all anybody's going to want to talk about. I just think that it's not a bad thing to sit down with your old relatives and tell them, hey, you cannot be doing this. Sometimes you need to do that. I don't know if you've ever had to have this conversation, Callum, with an older loved one where you gotta sit them down and be like, you need to stop doing such and such.
Fortunately not.
It's not okay. But I have. And I've had to say, you cannot say X. That is not okay. You cannot do Y. Somebody needs to sit him down and do this, because what I feel is happening is the people who are saying, go away, Rick, they're not saying, hey, you sexually assaulted a person. They're saying, I hate you, go away, you decrepit old fuck. Right? And in the nuance of that, there will be talks of the allegations and stuff, but a lot of it just reads like, oh, go away, you're taking up TV time. Also, Rick is a guy who has talked ad nauseum about struggles with identity and struggles with self and self-esteem. Yes, he's going to appear manipulative of those things at this time, but we also need to remember he probably is just genuinely like, oh, boo-hoo, they don't want me. But somebody needs to sit him down and just go, hey, it's just not your time. It's not time for you to be kiss, stealing, wheeling, dealing. I feel bad for the man who only seems to be alive when he's doing his shtick. I feel bad for the man who at 74 years old never found peace outside of that. But I think enough is enough. And AEW especially would be better off without him. As far as the people defending him, whatever, they're going to do that. I think the most shocking name I saw was Ryan Nemeth, who built the whole independent film around sexual assault in the wrestling industry. But I think it's just, you got to have a serious conversation. And what I would do is, whatever this thing with Sting is going to be, do it. And then keep Ric Flair, keep him on the payroll, maybe. It's not like a Punk situation. But keep him off TV. That's what I would do about Ric Flair.
Yeah.
I don't think, go ahead.
I was just fundamentally just shouldn't be on TV right now. It's just, and it's beyond the point of just also saying the stuff that he said. It's just the fact that when he is even just cutting a normal promo, he's not there anymore. He's not Ric Flair anymore.
Look, it was rambling in the 80s. There's a great promo from Dusty Rhodes where he's just like, no one wants to hear about Space Mountain. This was an issue 40 years ago, let alone now. And I think now is the time to have a serious conversation with him about why he shouldn't do the Ric Flair shtick. Those are my personal thoughts on Ric Flair.
Do you have any thoughts about Britt Baker tweeting about the lack of promo time she's got?
Mostly the thought that it was surprising to realize. Because I think you'll agree, we're on the podcast with Tony so much, and Tony's always like, I'm tired of Baker versus Cheetah versus Tony. You're tired of this rotation, and then you realize Baker hasn't done much of anything this year, has she?
No,
She just hasn't been involved.
she's always been for the most part this year, the second to Jamie Hayter. So mainly, I'm saying like managing her, but either in tag team matches with her or managing her, and she hasn't had a dedicated one-on-one feud for herself at this point this year. So,
Yeah, and I think that's a shame because I think she is a pillar of your company, and I think that you wouldn't do that to any other pillar of your company. And I don't care if people don't like Britt Baker. She's a huge asset to the company. You talk about restoring the feeling, which, by the way, I'll get to in a little bit. But you go back to Britt Baker if you want to restore the feeling. I think she's a great asset to the organization, and I hope that she does get some more promo time. I hope she's involved in the Devil deal, personally.
what do you think about the people liking the tweets about MJF potentially destroying the feeling in AEW?
Yes, destroying the feeling. I think fair criticism, because I think we've talked about on this podcast that the MJF stuff is the most counter programming AEW has ever done internally. But I also feel like MJF is AEW in the sense that he's always been that guy. Like, he was one of the first guys to get a shot at Mox in 2020, and he was, always the guy being groomed for the top spot, whether it was by Punk or, anyone that he's faced. But I also think that I don't want AEW to fall into the TNA trap. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, TNA, shortly after the start of the Main Event Mafia feud in 2008, everything became about, let's get back to the old TNA. And they'd be like, we're bringing in Hogan. And they'd be like, no, we got to go back to the old TNA. I just don't want that to be the constant discussion, because the truth is AEW is growing at a pace that no one's ever seen before. And we don't know what this is going to do. So do I think we need to restore the feeling? Yes. Do I want that to constantly be referenced? Absolutely not.
No, I mean, as I say, I think that AEW has moved away too much from set it apart in many aspects, but I also feel like we don't need people airing their dirty laundry out on social media. Like, this is something that should really be happening behind closed doors rather than because at the end of the day, whether you agree with the sentiments that Britt Baker and some of the other people that have liked those tweets are suggesting or not, it comes across as petty when you do that as well.
Yeah, and I also want to talk very briefly, because I don't know if you addressed this, about the Hardys. I
didn't actually bring them up, but they've been doing similar stuff, haven't they?
He said on his most recent podcast that he was a bit frustrated with the way the Hardy Boys were used, and I saw a lot of ridiculous responses to this. I saw people being like, they've been on TV more than Kenny and Hanger this year, and it's like, yes, it's not what he's talking about. He's talking about he believes they can be utilized in a more prominent position to put other teams over. And to be fair to AEW, that is exactly where they were headed last year before Jeff Hardy got arrested. They were going to win those tag titles and likely eventually put someone over. Full disclosure, I think his comments on his podcast were mostly at work. And I think we'll see the inner workings of that on TV at some point. However, I did want to bring that up because there is a bit of a feel from these more veteran talent of like, how dare you knock me? I'm Chris Jericho. I'm Matt Hardy. Why are you just telling me to go away because when I'm trying to help new promotion? And I've actually stuck up for Jericho more than most in my community, where it's like, I think he has helped the company, but I also think that this year in particular, a lot of people have gotten on board with the idea that Jericho's kind of sucked the air out of a lot of his programs. And I think I don't want to get too bogged down in restoring the feeling. I just want it to be organically restored. And I don't know if that's an easy fix.
I've been on a similar boat with Jericho where I'm starting to come around to that line of thinking. But the reason why, for the most part, that I've been more supportive of Jericho is that Jericho can still go. Like, Jericho still has great matches. The Hardys don't anymore. The Hardys they're too slow. They're too pondering. They just don't. They can't do what Jericho can still do. That's always been the difference for me, is that I'm not going to get on board with the Hardys saying that kind of thing, whether they are doing it as a work or whether they do it they mean it in reality. It doesn't matter so much to me, because Jeff Hardy is unreliable and Matt is well past his peak. So I think that's the difference for me.
Yeah, I think that there's still something they can offer. I just don't think that they've ever tapped into a performance level where they can offer that something. Does that make sense? Like, maybe behind the scenes, yes. But on camera, I don't know if either Matt or Jeff have ever tapped into a level of performance to where they can have a great promo battle with someone, or a great moment in putting someone over without needing to break out a ladder. And that's unfortunate, but that's the truth of where they are.
So I'd gone on to like TV talk related stuff. Is there anything? I kind of just ran down the results of NXT and then just talked about a few bits happening on Raw with like Cody Rhodes and Shinsuke Nakamura thing. Is there anything from either show that you want to bring up?
I just want to say that I think having Cody announce that it's time to finish the story was brilliant. Doing the thing with Nakamura is iffy, but I am glad that Shinsuke is on TV. You know, that's kind of where I stand with the Cody thing. I think the Creed brothers winning tag team turmoil is great. I hope they win those tag titles. Seth versus Jay next week should be great. I think outside of that, mentioned NXT, nothing major outside of the fact that Ava Raine was featured, or I guess she's just Ava now, was featured in a backstage as a random. Just a girl backstage who's just like, yeah, Roxanne, there's going to be a last chance match next week. It was just like, wow. Even removing the idea that she's Dwayne Johnson's daughter, the idea that she is just nothing in the promotion right now after being kind of featured as part of the schism, even though the guy who led that group is doing a comedy bit right now, so that speaks for itself. Outside of that, NXT, not much going on. I don't think they're continuing to tease this Lexis King stuff. I think it's ultimately going to be revealed that Melo did attack him. Maybe at this point, I kind of have lost a little bit of interest there. And I think Deadline will be a fine show. You did touch on Dynamite and the stuff with MJF and the Devil, yes?
I was going back to actually Collision to start off with, just to bring people up to speed with the Continental Classic, because we don't talk about Collision that much, but the Continental Classic is happening across both TV shows, so it's worth mentioning at least the two matches where results happen there. So it saw Claudio Castagnoli defeated Daniel Garcia to get his first points on the board, and then in somewhat of a surprising result, Brody King defeated Eddie Kingston in the main event to get the first 3 points there, and Eddie Kingston, the guy that's put both his Ring of Honor and New Japan Strong titles on the line in this tournament, is off to a losing start.
So. Hey, you know what? I think that's what happens when you put your titles on the line like that and you have everything to lose and nothing to gain. And I think people are going to come at you like a target. I think this tournament's fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that's there's obviously some other big takeaways being taken from this episode of Dynamite. I thought this episode of Dynamite was an excellent show. But there were 3 great tournament matches in this one for the Continental Classic. So we saw Jon Moxley defeated Jay Lethal, as you would expect. Jay Lethal is kind of already pretty much established as the guy that's there to like have some good matches, but to pretty much lose every single one of them. which is fine. That's a role for someone to play. But Moxley is definitely setting himself out as a favourite for this, and yeah, it was a very good match and the right result.
I think that I would have preferred Takeshita, but I think Takeshita shouldn't be losing. That's probably why he's not here.
Oh yeah, I would say like there are definitely other people that I would rather have than Jay Lethal in it, but Jay Lethal is playing a particular role in this, so I understand that. I thought Rouge versus Mark Briscoe was an excellent brawl where they just went at a million miles an hour because that's kind of what Rouge does, and Mark was kept up with him perfectly, and they had a very physical match, and Rouge got the victory. Again, another one that you expect. Mark Briscoe's there to have a lot of good matches and to lose the majority of them, but again, that was just another fun match right in the middle of the show.
Yeah, I think they'll eventually put Jay and Mark together just so that at least one of them can get some points on the board. Fun times, but right decision.
And then in the main event, we saw Swerve Strickland defeated Jay White pretty cleanly to win the match. Swerve is kind of been positioned as a bit more of a tweener, like even more leaning more towards babyface, really, coming off the victory over Hangman Page, because the crowd is just very much behind him. They like to chant the Who's House, Swerve's House. And he fought Jay White. They had another very, very good match here and yeah, they are very much firmly establishing that Swerve is a main event player in AEW now.
So here's my thing. I want him to lose this tournament and then win the world title. And I'd rather Jay White win this new Continental title and set the pace for that.
It's quite interesting because, so just to bring people up to speed with the Continental Classic, we'll stick with the gold one because the blue one's they're only one match in, and even Danielson and Andrade haven't even had a match yet. So, but on the gold side of things, we've now got Moxley and Swerve both top of the group with 6 points. Then behind them we have Jay White and Rouge with 3 points each, and Mark Briscoe and Jay Lethal at the bottom yet to score. So, but yeah, I mean, there's still definitely many different routes they can take so far. I'd like to know, because usually with the G1 Climax, they give you the whole schedule of every single match that's going to take place right at the start of the tournament, and we haven't seen that yet. So I'd probably have a clear idea about who I think is going through to the next round or to the finals if I knew what the final matches were. If I knew what the final matches on like week 5 of this would be, but right now I'm still leaning towards Swerve winning it, but or at least like getting through the gold block. But there's definitely good possibilities with him and White and Moxley about which one of them goes through. But wait and see. The tournament has been a very big success so far.
I think it's easily. First of all, it's good December booking. Because it's easy, but it's also, I feel like it's something that maybe is coming at a difficult time when people are wanting a bit more like progression on the world title scene. I definitely think, this is my personal opinion, MJF's run has been kind of, use his word, mid. I haven't loved it. But I think when it comes to an end, hopefully at World's End, it'll lead to better things for the company.
I think it's been on I think the mid-state sentiment has been largely due to the downward turn it's taken since All In. Since then, it's been a bit all meandering, really. But prior to that, with the whole Danielson and the 4 Pillars match, I think that a lot of people were a bit more favourable with MJF stuff. But yeah, it's definitely taken a downward turn now. But there were 2 big promo segments on this show, which are notable as well. One of them involving MJF, where he cut, I thought, one of the best promos he's cut since turning babyface, to really build up the legendary status of Samoa Joe prior to their match at World's End. And then after he cut his promo, he was attacked, or at least like being held in the ring by the Devil's cronies, and Joe came out to help and clear out the ring, just living up to his promise of protecting MJF prior to their match at World's End. And then there was text on screen saying that would MJF and Samoa Joe team up next week to take on presumably two members of the Devil's henchmen in a match.
Gotta unmask somebody, man.
There's that point. There is a point that you do have to unmask someone at some point, but I mean, I think that they did this somewhat cleverly. I know some people were thinking that there wasn't enough happening in this segment, but I feel like them not actually seen attacking MJF or not laying a finger on MJF still leaves open the possibility that MJF is the Devil.
Yeah, that is true, but I think that'd be too much of that'd be too silly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not leaning towards that being the direction right now, but I think they're trying to keep that option at least on the surface open to people to make them think that might be a possibility, so it makes the actual reveal more important. But yeah, we'll see what will happen next week, because presumably they will have that tag team match, and we'll see if someone gets unmasked or if there's something involved. I imagine that if they are doing an unmasking next week, it'll be revealed the team that they're facing is Mike Bennett and Matt Taven.
Yeah, I think that's the most low stakes, especially if they can manage to put the Ring of Honor tag team titles on the line. There is also the idea that MJF's kind of hurt.
Yeah, so
for the torn labrum.
Yeah, so he put a tweet that he deleted soon afterwards saying that he's suffered a torn labrum in his shoulder, which yeah, that's a pretty significant injury. It also lends a lot more weight to the idea that he might be dropping that title at World's End, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, if he does have to drop the title, Samoa Joe is not a bad choice to be your next AEW World Champion, even if it's just for I'd only be fine with Joe winning that title and just holding it for a short period of time before dropping it to someone else, whether that's Swerve, whether that's Hangman, whether that's Kenny, anybody else. But
yeah. I would actually I would go for a series of short runs. I'd have Joe win it here. I'd have Joe drop it to Swerve. I'd have Hanger win it by Double or Nothing, and then I'd have Hanger and Ospreay in Wembley.
That's a good choice as well. Yeah, I think I'm not penciling it in certainty, but I think that's a very good opportunity for Ospreay to have his final match, well, have his big title match at Wembley. But I'm also at the moment I'm toyed between Ospreay fighting for the world title all in, him fighting Omega in the third match, or him being Danielson's final big match at Wembley. So I think he's one of those things, but I don't know which one just yet. But yeah, and the other big promo segment was a segment between Christian Cage and Adam Copeland, where Christian Cage tried to fend off Copeland and just try and retrace himself and basically say, let's get back together, let's team up because that's what your mum wanted before she passed away, and let's do it for her, and try to play off the whole family aspect about Edge, of course, yeah, Adam Copeland not having a father, and playing off that aspect of it and saying that Christian's father was Adam's father, and just trying to make sure they don't fight at Montreal, but Copeland is too smart for that, just kicks him in the nuts, says that he's taking that title at next week in Montreal, and then tells him to go fuck himself, which the censors don't catch up with. And then
the censors did not catch up with that on a TBS, so I hope they don't have to pay too big of a fine. But I thought it was a really effective segment. And the thing, that's the weird thing about the whole restoring the feeling, right? Because as much as this is so anti-mission statement AEW, this ruled. And is the best version of Edge and Christian that you could possibly get in 2023. And I'm looking forward to it. I don't know who wins. And I like that feeling.
Yeah, I thought the segment was excellent. I think Adam Copeland, ever since joining AEW, has done really, really well. Has done the best that he possibly could do. I don't think that when I said that I didn't want him to come to AEW, I was ever talking about I never thought that he would be ineffective in his role. It's more of a case of I didn't know whether the ratings or the interest that he'd bring in would be worth the money that they're almost certainly paying him. But in terms of just pure ring work, character work, promos, all that stuff, he's been a highlight ever since he's joined. So kudos to him for that. And I think that he should beat Christian next week for the title.
So I'm leaning towards I'd like to see him beat Christian and then have a nice little run where he gets some singles matches checked off the bucket list and then eventually put over a young talent who loses that title. But there's also the fact of the matter of AEW has trademarked the East-West Express, and that is the tag team name of Jordan Oliver and Nick Wayne. And does, with the other two out, with Killswitch and Nick Wayne out, does Jordan Oliver show up to make the save for Christian and reunite that tag team with Nick Wayne?
Yeah, I'm of the perspective, and this is just from my side of it, I think Edge should beat Christian in Montreal, and then Christian wins it back at World's End with the help of his whole new patriarchy, which is Killswitch for the time being, and then Nick Wayne and Jordan Oliver and Nick's mum as on side as well. So it's everyone against Adam Copeland at that point. So I'd have, it would just be cool just to have, like, you know, Adam Copeland has that title for a little while. He gets to add his lineage to it, but he doesn't hold it for super long. So I don't think he needs that title. And I think that this feud can go on a lot longer. Well, I say it can go, I don't say a lot longer, but it can go on up until probably about Revolution. And then that's like, we draw the line under it at that point. But I think that, well, I think the overarching thing is that, again, if you turn like a super long story with this, the idea would be Christian manages to get the better of this story, and Adam Copeland then goes off to do some other things in the meantime. And then the long-running storyline is Killswitch eventually turns on Christian, but that's to be expected. And then before long, then it's Nick Wayne and Jordan Oliver turn on Christian Cage. And then that's when you eventually turn Christian back babyface and you reunite him with Edge. And they have one final run.
Yeah, then they can do that run, and that's how Adam at least ends his story. I don't know about Christian, but
that's like, again, that's probably way far into the future. That's like almost like that's sometime late next year.
Months. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I'm very much looking forward to their match next week. Hopefully, I presume they would main event the show, and yeah, I think there's going to be a big title match, a big feeling to it. I think one way or the other, it should be an interesting result, because either you're going to see Adam Copeland become a champion again, which he
really hasn't. Like, that to me was the biggest surprise.
He hasn't won a title since he came back to wrestling. So
yeah, that was the biggest surprise of his WWE run, that they didn't go, all right, let's give him and Damian a tag run. Let's give him the WrestleMania run, because that's a nice, happy moment. He deserves to have at least one run with the championship. I think Edge adds something to titles that a lot of people don't.
I hope this match is good, because that's one of the things that like Edge and Christian had a lot of matches in WWE against each other, not like tons and tons, but they had a decent number. They had a good feud in like 2001, but I don't think they've ever had a great match yet against each other. And I'd be interested to see, I think that they're at their stage now where they can have that absolutely great match with each other that we'd want to see. So yeah, looking forward to Dynamite next week. Just wanted to bring up one other final thing, TV wise, that most people, well, I'd say most people, but a lot of people potentially listening to this wouldn't have seen, which is involving Ring of Honor, which has been doing some good stuff recently. I still tune in every week, and I think that they've brought some interesting things together. But the real connective tissue of Ring of Honor for the past 3 to 6 months has been Athena and her minions in training. And so there was a whole show-long storyline aspect to this, with Athena cutting a promo at the start saying that this was the opportunity for Billy to get a win over Marina Shafir and to prove herself alongside Lexi Nair. And then Billy beats Marina Shafir later on in the night, so she gets the victory. Athena comes out with like graduation gowns, and then she announces that Lexi Nair has graduated to be the Minion Bestie, and that Billy is still not graduated. Billy gets in Athena's face about this, eventually throws her into the barricade, holds the title aloft, and Tony Khan later in the show announces that Billy Starks will be challenging Athena for the Ring of Honor Women's title at Final Battle. So that's your main event right there.
Is it weird that Tony Khan is just an on-camera boss in Ring of Honor, but he doesn't do that for AEW?
I mean, he's kind of on camera. When he has like special announcements, and as we say, like he's not coming out in the middle of matches to say things are happening. He's just backstage occasionally and says, "Hey, you're doing well. You're going to be the next title. You're going to be in the next title match. You're going to have a big match next week." I think that he plays a pretty similar role on both shows. I mean, there's no real authority figure on AEW.
That is true.
But I think that it's but beyond that point of thing, I think that it's cool that they're having this match. This is how you end Athena's title reign, by putting over a real prodigy in the wrestling in like a wrestling sense, with her putting over Billy Starks. You've got this new young fresh face on top of the division. Athena's done wonders with that title. She's been best women's Ring of Honor Women's Champion in history by a country mile. And yeah, I want to see her back on AEW, but in order to do that, she has to leave it in good hands, and she will do that by having a great match with Billy Starks and putting her over in the main event of Final Battle. That's the best way to establish someone and to cap off a excellent title reign.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be the real graduation for Billy. And they've told the story as good as they can. Weird detour with Ronda, but they've told the story as well as they could.
I think it was just I think they weaved it in. It is a bit of a weird detail because obviously she won that match and everyone thought that, okay, they're going to do Ronda versus Athena at Final Battle, but Ronda's come out this week and said that she's not signed with AEW and she's only doing like sporadic stuff because she's concentrating on her family right now. And yeah, so I think that they weaved it in at least well enough by saying that, okay, so she beat you last week, and so you've got to prove yourself now by beating Rina Shafir one-on-one. Like that whole story they were telling of, oh, we tag together and we always lose, but you then have a singles match with someone and you win all the time. Like, what's going on? And Tony Khan even bringing up the fact that like she's won 9 straight singles matches, so of course she's next in line for the title. So I think that this has been a well told story, and definitely, especially with the Ring of Honor World Title just up in the air, involved in this Continental Classic right now, that there's no real other choice than to make this your main event. And fundamentally, even if the Ring of Honor World Title was still heavily involved and Eddie Kingston was still doing stuff, this should be the main event of the show.
Yeah, I agree, but I just think I would like someone to ask Tony Khan up front, hey, was this the vision you had for ROH? Because at no point in time has it ever felt like a major promotion with the major world championship that is front and center on their brand. You know what I mean? It was like they had Claudio and Jericho. It was kind of just like the what was I gonna say to you? It was kind of just like Claudio and Jericho had a match. Everything else was kind of blah, you know?
I'd say that Athena has been kind of the success story of Ring of Honor. As I say, it probably isn't where he would have hoped it would be, because I assume he would have hoped that he would have sorted something out with Warner Brothers Discovery beforehand and maybe managed to get it onto one of their TV shows, one of their channels at some point. But they've kept it on on demand. And yeah, I think that there might be visions for it in the future where it is more contained with itself. But I think that yeah, It's hard to really say. As Ring of Honor being the most cohesive and well put together wrestling show ever made, no. But I think that especially in the last like 2 to 3 months, it's definitely moving in the right direction. So I think it's just a slow process because at the end of the day, there are bigger things to focus on than Ring of Honor right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But at least we got that final battle main event locked in, and I'll definitely be checking that out once. It's only in like a couple of weeks now, so they've picked the right time for it. There's also going to be a like 6-way scramble match to determine the next Ring of Honor television champion. We'll see how that goes. See whoever Wheeler Yuta is defending the Pure Championship against. Because actually didn't talk about that either because that happened on Rampage like soon after we'd finished recording last week. But Wheeler Yuta is the new Pure Television Champion because Shibata had to go back to Japan for visa reasons. So we got a new Pure Champion out of nowhere. Yeah, and there's not too much else to talk about from a TV side of things. Like on SmackDown, they've previewed that both Randy Orton and Logan Paul are going to be on the show. So we'll see who Logan Paul will potentially be facing next for the US title. Like Randy Orton is seemingly in free agent status right now, where he can go between shows, even though it seems to be involved with Judgment Day related activities. But Judgment Day can also go between shows because they've got the tag team titles. So who knows where that will end up leading or what his first kind of real feud back in the company will be. But he's said in his promo on Raw that he's got unfinished business with the Bloodline, so maybe he's going after Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso on this show.
That would make the most sense. And then build to Roman at the Rumble. Maybe Roman has a chamber defense, maybe not. And then we'll get to Cody at WrestleMania.
Yeah. So that's all really for the hot tags of the week, unless there's anything else that you would like to bring up or mention.
No, I think we covered it all. We covered it all real nicely, and we'll be back again to do it next week.
Yeah, absolutely. So that ends the hot tags episode 626. Just to wrap it up with a few little plugs at the end, because we didn't really cover that much at the start. But if you have enjoyed what you've listened to here, then drop a like on this video. If you're listening to on YouTube, obviously if you're listening to on the podcast feeds, you can find a way to either drop us a 5-star review or any other ways that you can share this around with anyone else. That'd be great. Obviously head to the website itself, smarkoutmoment.com, if you want to check out any other news information, any like articles and results and all that other great stuff you can check on there. From my perspective, you can check out the power rankings, my weekly contribution where I'm ranking the WWE superstars based on their weekly performance every week. So head on over there. You can also find the fantasy league and see how all of our points are doing out Survivor Series after Survivor Series, with Tony has added CM Punk to his roster. Who did you add to yours?
I added Tony D'Angelo, and they've defended successfully, thankfully.
Yep, so that will give you some extra points. I brought Asuka back onto my team as well, so see how that advances. And yeah, that's all. That's all going well there. So check out all the stuff on Smark at the moment. Head over to Fanboys Anonymous as well. They recently released the whole DC versus Marvel Survivor Series and all of that stuff as well. So check out those videos up on, I think it's shared between, one's on Smark Out Moment, one's on Fanboys Anonymous. So check out both their YouTube pages to listen to those big ramblings that Tony has put hours of planning into. So check those ones out. If you're interested in picking up some merchandise, you've got Redbubble and TeePublic. Pick up some Smark Out Moment merchandise. And I think that's most of the stuff out of the way at the very least. Just follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all the other great stuff at Smark Out Moment. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Weekmeister14, and you can find Rob in places as well.
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at DudeFelice. You can check out all of my writing on Pipeful.com. And of course, you can check me out on Smark Out Moment and Fanboys Anonymous.
Guys, that's it from us. So thank you very much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you again sometime next week. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.